Okay, so I've been thinking about this a lot. It's when have I not been thinking about this? I probably already made like 4 videos called The Meaning of Life. Okay, so the conclusion that I continuously come up with is that there is no meaning in life, and yet there is meaning in life. And so the meaning of life, from the grand scheme of things, is there's no meaning really. It's just like lila, divine play, divine dance. It's a creative act by the divine to play with itself, to experience an infinite number of forms, an infinite number of experiences, an infinite number of shapes. So God wants to be an elephant, God wants to be a tree, God wants to be a plant, God wants to be wood, God wants to be human, God wants to be Anunnaki, God wants to be, all these extraterrestrials. God wants to be evil, God wants to be good, God wants to be the bad guy, the good guy, man, woman, old, young, baby. So really, it's like experience and play and lila. Now, so that's the part where we could say there is maybe perhaps no meaning, and yet there is meaning. So in this creative, playful act, God wanted to gain awareness of all its parts, all itself, because God is pure awareness. Okay, God's pure awareness. When you're pure awareness, there's nothing to be aware of. You're pure awareness, nothing to be aware of. But when you do create the experience of duality, suddenly you're aware of yourself in all these different ways. So this is why, like, for example, you look at a view like this, is like really magnificent, you know? You look, clouds, mountains, and then by looking at that and by being in awe of it, you gain awareness to yourself as God, saying, wow, I am really, 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 really beautiful. Like, wow, I manifest in the clouds and the mountains and in this beautiful harmony and oneness. I'm really beautiful. So, in this act, God essentially wants to gain compassion and love for itself in all these different parts. It wants to gain appreciation for itself. So, you appreciate the mountain, you appreciate the cloud. There, you've just fulfilled the purpose of the simulation. The simulation is a compassion simulation. The simulation is an appreciation simulation. It's a love simulator. That's what we're inside in. It's a love simulator. It's a compassion simulator. It's it's an appreciation simulator. For God to appreciate itself, for God to love itself, for God to be compassionate to itself, and to alleviate the suffering of itself in all these different forms. So part of the game, the way the game works, is that there's suffering. Suffering makes the game feels real. Suffering gives the game grounds in which it can be played on. If there is no suffering, there's no game. If there's no conflict, there's no game. There's no duality. Period. There's no duality. If there's no suffering, if there's no evil doers in the world, there's no good doers. There's no people, there's no relief of suffering. There's no light workers. There's no you and I. There's no you and I. Forget about it, doing good and alleviating suffering. That doesn't exist if there's no suffering. That's the duality. That's the experience of duality. Suffering is a necessary element of it, in which it's the variable that creates the ground in which the game of life, the game of creation, the play of the lila, the divine dance of lila, the dance of the divine with itself, can be played. So therefore, the alleviating of suffering needs suffering. It's sort of the question. The question contains the solution. The problem contains the answer. Suffering contains alleviating of suffering. That's the perfection of creation, the perfection of everything, right? It's really perfect. It's exquisite when you see it from that perspective. So then, the meaning of life for a human being becomes to alleviate the suffering of all beings as much as possible. That's the bodhisattva role. The bodhisattva role is the role of he and she who come back to incarnate to alleviate the suffering of all, also known as a light worker. And I suspect many of you guys are light workers. I know many of you guys are light workers. I don't suspect. And so then our job is to alleviate the suffering of humanity, of animals, of plants, of Mother Gaia, because that's what happens when God becomes more realized. When God becomes more realized, when God gets up in the game, climbs up the ladder of the game of evolution of consciousness, going from separation to wholeness, is the game, really. Then, really, like, the further and further you go along the game, you gain compassion to yourself in all these different forms. And it becomes more difficult to do things which increase separation and cause harm to others, because you know that that's you playing in different roles. Okay, so then you gain more awareness of who you are, which is wholeness, which is I am all. Then the compassion can't help but increase, and then the purpose becomes, the meaning becomes of your existence, becomes to alleviate the suffering of others, becomes to alleviate the suffering in the way in which the universe commands of you, through your current circumstances. So for example, for me, I look around and I say, I'm blessed. I'm blessed. I have exquisite health. I have been guided into, a lifestyle of fasting and lifestyle of, temperance as far as eating. I've been led into a lifestyle of, like a dream lifestyle. I live a dream existence, very relaxed all the time. uh, Bird sounds, beautiful views, no stress. I got this chill ass job on weekends only. I teach kids, like, there's no stress. I got, amazing intimate relationships in my life. So then hold on. Thy giveth and thy taketh, not my will but thy will, O Lord. If God gave me all this stuff, God gave me all these blessings, and I really, when I sit down and I do a gratitude meditation and I count my blessings, I start to cry. God, you have blessed me with so much. You blessed me with so much. I'm blessed. What? Hold on, why? Why am I not begging on the streets? Why am I not in a hospital somewhere because I didn't have the guidance, the proper guidance by spirit to take care of my health and really maximize everything and feel good and blissful due to that? Why am I not somebody stressed in like a 9 to 5 job right now? Why am I not stuck in traffic? And then the answer comes very clearly in that state of consciousness, because, it's clear. It's because your primary job here is to alleviate the suffering of others. Therefore, I've given you all these blessings. I've given you a comfortable life, so you could begin to do your work to alleviate the suffering of others. You don't simply have the luxury to contemplate the absolute and contemplate all these things and reflect on them unless you're comfortable in all these other ways. So if God has given you all these comforts and all these blessings, even the blessing to realize that, see, that on its own is a blessing. To realize that, hold on, I'm so blessed like that, there must be a reason for it, and there indeed is. And as it turns out, the reason is because your primary job here is to alleviate the suffering. And indeed, it is to alleviate the suffering. And the more I realize that, the more I do the gratitude meditations and I count my blessings, the more I realize, yes, of course. Of course. My primary job here is to alleviate suffering. It's alleviating suffering through words, through bringing awareness, primarily through these videos. That's why I'm like making 2 videos a day now. That's why I'm like working on this day and night now. It's no joke no more, because that's the meaning of my life. That's the meaning of your life. And the more and more you climb up the ladder in this game and gain awareness and gain appreciation and gratitude, the more you realize, yeah, of course, the purpose of my existence is to alleviate suffering, to increase harmony in the universe, to decrease disharmony in the universe, bring more harmony, more compassion, more love. And then you see how exactly, what is my role in the universe here? What is my role in the game, in the drama? And then you start to look around and say, what kind of blessings have God given me? Maybe God has given you so much money. Well, perhaps you ought to start a charity. Perhaps you ought to start donating money to people that need it, mental illness or physical illness, etc. Bring awareness. You see, what do you feel an affinity for? Maybe you grew up having schizophrenia and you realize that's just shamanism, really. And now you start a foundation for bringing awareness that schizophrenia is really shamanism, and you start to bring out all these shamans, and then you take all these people that have so-called schizophrenia and you begin to train them to be shamans, maybe because you had that problem in your life. I can think of a friend who maybe ought to start that because he had so-called schizophrenia, but he was really just a shaman in disguise. All schizophrenics are shamans in disguise. Perhaps that's your calling. Perhaps, like myself, you've got a calling for speaking, for talking, for whatever reason. But you start to see, what is it? How did the universe place you? What kind of blessings did the universe give you? The universe gave me the blessing of speech. I could speak and speak and speak. And I do exquisitely put words together. And I exquisitely convey ideas and abstractions in a way that is presentable, that is understandable, that leaves an impression on the psyche of the listener. It's a gift. It's an innate gift that I have, that I possess naturally. It's my way of alleviating suffering. I have no real inclination at this moment to start a charity or to donate to the poor, etc. I don't have it. I do what I can to give, tips to the locals here, etc. whenever I'm placed in a situation, But other than that, you follow your way, you follow your Tao, you see, how can I alleviate the suffering? Because you're not going to alleviate the suffering all on your own. You're not Jesus Christ. I mean, even Jesus Christ, what did he do? He didn't really alleviate the suffering of all. He did his thing. He did his thing. He preached his thing. You know what I mean? And it's not like, suddenly everything turned out to be beautiful and cool 2,000 years ago. The Romans continued to be assholes. They continued to be assholes, and then the Mongols came 1,000 years later. They were bigger assholes than the Romans. So just because Jesus Christ preached and came in and said, you guys got to be compassionate, it didn't mean it alleviated the suffering of all. It just means he did his thing. He did his Jesus thing. And he alleviated the suffering of those that were ready, whose suffering was ready to be alleviated. So when you come here to alleviate suffering, those whose suffering will be alleviated are those who are ready to have their suffering alleviated in one way or another. And you got to understand that very well. I can't go to a random person in the street here and say, well, my friend, I love you so much, and I'm seeing that all this food that you've been eating is causing you all these troubles, and I've been speaking to you and you're telling me you've got all these issues and you have cancer, or you have an illness, or you have aches and pains all over. I can't go to a random person and be like, you've got to stop eating this food. They're going to be like, who are you to tell me that? In fact, I have intimate people in my life. I can't even go up to them and say, you ought to change your diet. I can't do that. Because they're going to be like, well, why? You're going to get defensive about it. Well, why? I like this food. You think you're better than me because you do your fasting and you do your dry fasting and you're becoming a breatharian. You think you're better than me? You're becoming a breatharian and you're better than me? Even intimate people that are close to me, I just keep my mouth shut, because I sense they're not ready to have their suffering alleviated in that way. Now it's different if they come up to me and say, Saeed, you look fantastic, you feel fantastic, I sense your energy, you've got this, this energy about you, and you look healthy. What have you been doing? That's a different story. That's a person whose suffering is ready to be alleviated. Same thing if you come across some of the videos here. Your suffering is ready to be alleviated. You're ready to hear the message. You're ready to apply the message. So you've got to understand that also. That indeed that is the meaning of your life, is to alleviate suffering. Remember, the grand meaning is it's all a game. It's taking place. God getting lost in separation, getting back to oneness. It's play. It's really there's just experience, really, at the end of it. It's the experience of going from separation to oneness. But within it, there is meaning. And within it, it's kind of like doing a puzzle. I said this over before, but I say it again. Doing a puzzle. There's no reason to put a puzzle together. And yet, when you put it together, it takes on a meaning. Everything becomes meaningful. You see that if there is a sun on the right of the puzzle, you see that there is a connection, that all the pieces that contain a red radiance are, you take them, put them on the right side of the puzzle, because that's going to form the sun. That's going to make the sun up. So although doing the puzzle is just a playful act, there's no meaning to me taking a puzzle, taking it apart, putting it back in. Really, that's what it is. Really, it's a life is a puzzle you put back together. There's no meaning. You see a kid putting a puzzle together, what is the meaning of it? The kid's just playing. And yet, when the kid's playing, when you're putting the puzzle together, it all takes on a meaning. Everything has connection. Everything has meaning. If the puzzle piece is yellow, and if the puzzle picture contains a sun, then you make the connections. You start to put these pieces together. There is meaning created within it. So the meaning that's created within the meaningless is the alleviation of suffering. So then when you come to do your thing to alleviate suffering, you're only going to alleviate the suffering of those whose suffering is ready to be alleviated, who are karmically ready to have their suffering relieved. And so your job becomes to work full-time to alleviate suffering. To alleviate your own suffering and the suffering of those around you. And I have really been coming to understand that experientially, because I have been doing all these meditations, and I've been really digging deep into the heart meditations, and I've been really crying a lot, because I've been sort of absorbing and taking on the suffering of the world. And then I cry and I'm like, wow. And then I do the appreciation and gratitude meditations. I'm like, I'm so blessed. I'm not really suffering all that much. I mean, I'm having kind of a pretty kick-ass time over here, And I'm like, hold on. And then this innate desire comes in me. I'm like, I want to alleviate suffering. I love everyone. I love everything and everyone. And I start crying, like, I want to alleviate the suffering of others. And then it becomes this innate thing. It's the Tao gaining compassion for itself. It's like I'm not even trying to make videos and to bring awareness now. I just want to do it. That's why I'm doing 2 videos a day now. Wait for it, maybe 3 videos. Who knows? Can't stop thinking about this stuff no more. I can't stop bringing awareness no more. But you guys find these videos so you're ready for it. And in life itself, I only open my mouth now. I've learned this the hard way, because I used to be more of a preacher. I'd go and come on to people. Now it's just like, if somebody comes to me, asks me something or whatever, and I feel they're ready for me to sort of share what it is that I know is going to alleviate their suffering, then I go ahead and do it. Otherwise, there's no point. You've got to recognize that everything is perfect and everyone's perfect exactly where they are. Do not feel superior to anybody else, because if you see somebody and their life is a mess and they're smoking and they're got this terrible diet, that's perfect. That's perfect. They're perfect as they are. Just like a crooked tree. It's a perfect tree. Same thing. That's perfect. So don't feel superior or anything. Just recognize that person will have their suffering alleviated when they're ready to have their suffering alleviated. Because it's all perfect. Everything is written anyway. It's all maktub. It's determined that person will be at that particular part of evolution, doing that particular thing, having that particular experience of smoking and eating terrible food and having aches and pains and digestive issues. It's written. That's the way it's supposed to be right now. They're suffering physically and mentally like that. And once they're ready to have their suffering alleviated, believe me, they will have their suffering alleviated. Okay? So that is the meaning for your life in a nutshell. You're playing. You're dancing with yourself. You're coming back from separation to wholeness. And the more you become whole, the more naturally and spontaneously inclined you're going to be to want to alleviate suffering. So make sure you do it in any way you feel inclined to. You could alleviate suffering by creating music, You could be this uh, introverted, I don't want to talk to anybody person, just hanging out in your room, hanging out in the woods, strumming your guitar, releasing your music to the world, not even talking to anybody, just putting your music out there. You don't want to talk to people. You just don't want to talk to them, and they're alleviating the suffering of millions with your beautiful music. They listen to this vibration, it hits them, and they feel so good, and they feel so wonderful, and they go and they start to because of the music you created, they go and you call your mom and you buy her flowers. You become a nicer person because of someone else's music. And who's gonna find your music? People who are ready to find your music. Who's gonna listen to Bob Marley? People who already listen to Bob Marley. You see? It's all perfect. You just do your part of the dance. You just dance your dance. That's all. That's the meaning of life. Dance. Dance your dance. And in that dance, you will alleviate suffering. Okay? Thank you to all the patrons for supporting this channel. You guys alleviate my suffering in that way, because I know that there are people that are willing to support financially. And so then, therefore, I know that in the future, I'll be able to do this full time. And then my dream right now, guys, is to travel around the world, wherever you guys are, by the way. I know like 45% of the audience is in America. Another 15 is in UK. So I'll travel to the places you guys are in and host retreats and stuff. So my dream is to have full-time support financially through Patreon and PayPal donations. And then just travel around the world and host retreats, and talk about this stuff and do the actual practice, the practices, the gratitude meditation, the love, compassion, flaming heart meditations, etc., etc., and just do all these things together, right? And hang out together. So if you want to support, the links are in the description, in the comments. You can do $2 a month, right? That's $24 a year. That's nothing, Even if you're a high school student with a part-time job, that's nothing, right? So anything I contributed, I appreciate. And Instagram, Said Mabayat. Don't forget about that. And until next time. Oh, yeah. No, that's about it. Until next time, may the force be with you.